Hi everybody, happy Easter. So I don't know about you, but I've been hearing a lot of people use the phrase we're a resurrection people. So I wanted to talk about how we can live our lives as Christians proclaiming the gospel that way. And I'm going to use my family to do it. It's actually a tragic story. It has a good ending, but it starts with tragedy. So my grandfather was killed in a robbery in the city of Detroit a long time ago, the year before I was born. But that incident really sparked a conversion in my whole family. And at the funeral that day, my grandmother told her children and her grandchildren that this is the day the Lord has made, and we're going to rejoice in it because your grandfather's going to heaven today. So that event really transformed my mom, and she and my dad had been married a few years. They had 4 little kids, and they kind of had put their family on hold while they were raising my older siblings, because it was a lot for them to handle as a young married couple. But that day when my mom came home, she had that conversation with my dad with a new awareness that the devil's the architect of death and God is the architect of life. And in her grief, she wanted them to participate and be open to life again. And so that's the reason why I was born, was out of that great trauma and that tragedy. But then as my parents kind of grew in conversion, they raised us with an understanding of what it meant to be a resurrection people. And so the very first thing is that life is sacred, right? That God is the giver of life, and that there's evil in the world, and there's death, and there's the devil. But that's not God. That God is who we see in Jesus Christ. That Jesus came to save us from sin and from death and from darkness. And we celebrate that this Easter season. The second thing that they taught us is that you don't know the day or the hour of your death. We don't get to control that. And so we have to live our lives in a way that prepares for it. That's why the Christian life is so important. You know, how we try and live in virtue, how we celebrate the sacraments, how we celebrate in community, because we don't know the day or the hour. And then the third thing as a people of the resurrection is that we know heaven's real. For my whole life, my mother has taught me that I could speak to my grandfather. I never met him, I haven't yet, but I've been able to talk with him. Right? In fact, she would tell me that every time I go to Mass, it's like walking into heaven, and that I can talk with the angels and saints and with Mary and Joseph, and that Jesus is seated on the throne, because heaven's real. And we believe that as a resurrection people. It doesn't mean we don't grieve, but it means that the veil is thin and that we have access to those who go before us in prayer and in communion in the heart, and in the communion in the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And then the last thing, as a people that believe in the resurrection, is that we have to express love for one another in every moment that we have. In fact, my mom would always make the sign of the cross on my forehead and give me a kiss on my way out of the house every day. And as my car would leave the driveway, she'd actually watch and she'd wave, at the front window. I remember asking her one day, like, Mom, that's a little overkill. Like, why are you doing that? And she said, because I never got to say goodbye to my dad. I never had the final conversation where I could just say, Dad, I love you. So she never wastes a moment. And so I learned that from her, that as a resurrection people, we express love. We can have moments when we're impatient or when we're afraid, but then we have to express love through that as well with each other. So my brothers and sisters, we're a resurrection people. We don't know the season ahead. Some of us may already be grieving, but we have to make a choice then to believe that life is sacred, that this life is not it. Heaven is in fact real. And at every moment, you and I can choose love, because Jesus Christ chose love. He died, he rose, he ascended, and he claimed heaven for us. So with that, know that I'll continue to pray for you. You please pray for me. Jesus Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.